Hey guys, I thought I would share with you some of my favorite new fall eyeshadow palettes. So these are eyeshadow palettes that are newer to my collection. These are eyeshadow palettes that maybe I haven't spoken about over the past few years. I feel like there's a lot of eyeshadow palettes that I've been pretty repetitive about. I'm trying to shake things up a little bit, and these are palettes that I am definitely looking forward to using more in the fall, autumn, early winter time. So I'm going to go ahead and start with what is on my eyes, and that is the Isamaya Industrial Color Pigments eyeshadow palette. This is the one that just came out, I want to say a few months ago, and this appeared in my favorites. And when I open up this palette, boy, do I think of fall, winter. I mean, especially with this like pumpkin spice color. Today I have this shade on to kind of match my shirt, and then this shade to give me a little bit of dimension. But today I wanted to add this color with you guys, kind of demo it with you and apply it. So, sorry, I should have taken out a brush first. So I've got my Esom W23 brush, and I'm gonna go into that orangey shade. And I'm just going to apply it right over. This is kind of like a topper metallic glittery shade. And it gives you just a little bit of hint of the shade, so it's not quite as opaque and as deep as it looks in the pan. So it just gives me a little bit of like a Halloween vibe. Isn't that so pretty? And I think that's what I love the most about this palette. We have all of these different types of textures in here. A lot of the shades, as funky as this entire palette is, at least funky to me, okay? I'm a very basic person when it comes to eyeshadow. So when I say funky, it's funky to me. But when I open this up, I think, wow, this is pretty daring. It's pretty funky. But I feel like so many of these shadows are, because they're so different in texture, like you can just kind of figure out a way to use it for yourself. So I feel like if you were to layer this over, let's say like a dark, like this black matte shadow, and then you were to put this on top, I mean, that would look really edgy, really funky. But I like using, as you guys know, I like using eyeshadows a little bit lighter. And just by patting this orange coppery shade, I just get this like, you know, kind of like a hint of pumpkin spice. And it's so awesome. So not only do I find this color story perfect for the fall, but I feel like in terms of it just being like a newer kind of eyeshadow palette to my collection, this is just such a great one. And I'm definitely going to continue using this quite a bit into the fall, autumn, winter season. It's just been like such an inspirational palette to me. So that's the Industrial Color Pigments eyeshadow palette from Isamaya. And as usual, I will link everything down below in my description box if you're interested in getting more information and all of that stuff. I also list all the prices down there in my description box too. And this is available on Selfridges, which is UK based. So the price of the products kind of fluctuate too, depending on where I link them. So anyway, you'll find it all down below in my description box, at least the latest price. Okay, so that is palette number one. Palette number two are these new quads from Guerlain. They're the Ombre G eyeshadow quads. And Guerlain had Ombre G quads previously, but they just recently like redid this entire line. They reformulated, they redesigned the packaging. There's new color stories, and I really, really love this Royal Jungle quad. This is number 940. And to me, this is like just a really beautiful, perfect kind of fall, smoky kind of eyeshadow quad. It is, I think, warm leaning. But it's not too warm. Like I don't find this shade, which is a gold, to be too orangey. I find this brown also to have just a little bit of gold in there, but it's not too much. So I find that this can be used in a very neutral kind of way. So, you know, if you're wearing it with a warmer kind of like peach lipstick, I think it'll look fine. If you're wearing it with like a cooler tone mauve lipstick, I think it would look fine. But this is a baked gelée formula, which you guys know I love. And for me, these just apply really, really beautifully. I like that they're not like overly saturated. I feel like I don't have to be terribly careful with these eyeshadows, but they build and they build really beautifully and they last all day. They're just really, really gorgeous. And I'll also link down below in my description box. I'm just thinking, like I did a whole look with this Royal Jungle quad. So I'll link that down below if you're interested in seeing this in action. But I did purchase 3 of the new quads, and Imperial Moon I was probably most excited for, and I do really enjoy that quad, but this one I feel like just performs a little bit better, and I really like this particular color story for the fall. So this is another palette that I am really looking forward to in the fall, and definitely on the newer side. I think these quads came out maybe a couple months ago? Yeah, a couple months ago. Anyway, let's move on. The next eyeshadow palette I am really excited to use for the fall is the new Cougar palette from Pkwy. Here is the cover. And this is a quad with these 4 colors in there. And this to me is just the perfect everyday eyeshadow palette. I can use these 3 shades here, which have like a matte satin finish, kind of a mixture there, for just an everyday basic bitch kind of palette. And if I want to amp it up a little bit, I've got this metallic brown that has a little bit of warmth to it. There's like a little bit of a copper kind of undertone there. And you can just kind of tap it on with your finger, kind of focus it maybe on the outer edge if you want to build a little dimension. So we can go from day to night really easily in this quad. And I happen to be a big fan of Pkwy eyeshadows. I think the formulas are really nice. These shades here, which are like, you know, a soft matte or a very soft satin, are really, really finely milled, very, very silky soft. They blend beautifully. And yeah, I just love everything about this palette. The color story, the mixture of finishes in there, the options that you have. It's just a really beautiful palette. So that is Cougar from Pkwy. And this next palette I have, it's another quad. So I'm not the biggest fan isn't the right word, because when I see a big eyeshadow palette, I get very excited, right? I love big eyeshadow palettes. They remind me of like those big paint palettes that I used when I was little. I just really, really love eyeshadows and the colors and all of that good stuff. But really when it comes down to it, I just find quads really easy to use, especially if it's a quad that I find has a little bit of versatility, like that Cougar quad, where, you know, you have like very easily a daytime look, and then you can just throw on a shade or 2 and kind of like create an evening look. I really, really like quads for that. So anyway, I have another quad for you, and this is one of the new Chanel tweed quads. This is number 4. This is the tweed Brun et Rose, and I'm sure I slaughtered that. So in terms of like usability, I guess this is very similar to the Pkwy Cougar quad, where I feel like if I use these 3 shades right here, just a really beautiful kind of like everyday look. The shades in here are a little bit deeper than the Pkwy Cougar, so if you're looking for something just a little bit smokier, or maybe you're someone that spends a lot of time on Zoom and so your makeup has to be just a little bit bolder, that way it's actually visible on camera, this may be a better option for you. And then kind of the fun standout shade in this palette is this really beautiful, highly metallic kind of ballet pink color. So I find when I tap this onto the inner corner of my eye or the tear duct area, it really just brightens up the whole eye look. And I find that this is another very quick way to kind of turn a pretty basic eyeshadow look into something a little bit more exciting, a little bit more fun. Or you can layer this all over the lid, either by itself, over these other eyeshadows, and I think you get this really beautiful like frosty finish. It's really gorgeous. So that is another palette I am loving for this fall season. Oh, and if you guys are unfamiliar, here is the tweed pouch to this particular quad. So they came out with 4 tweed quads, and the tweed pouches for all 4 kind of are color coordinated to the quad. So this is the one for number 4. It's really, really pretty. Very special. And last but not least, this eyeshadow palette is probably the oldest out of these 5 that I'm talking about, but it's still relatively new. This is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension eyeshadow palette number 2. I think, wow, it's actually not on here. I think they refer to this as the rose one. Anyway, I continue to be so impressed with the Patrick Ta eyeshadow palettes. This is number 2. I really loved the first one. This one is just gorgeous, and I love this particular color story for fall because they are just a little bit more rosy in tone, Like here we've got these. The first Major Dimension palette was just a little bit more neutral, but I really like this for the fall time, especially this color, this like wine color. Oh, it's just gorgeous. And you know, the Patrick Ta cream shadows, so there's two in each of his palettes, and they're covered by this like plastic lid here. I, for sure, when I purchased the first one, I thought for sure, whatever, I'm not going to use those. I'll just focus on the actual eyeshadows. Those are my favorite eyeshadows in the first palette and in this palette, those cream eyeshadows. I come to these palettes sometimes just for the cream shadows. Patrick Ta, if you are watching, listening, if anyone out there knows Patrick, can you please let him know that an entire palette of cream shadows would be really welcome. Thank you very much. So I really love this palette, and I think especially for the fall time when I get a little bit more bold with my eyeshadow looks, I really start to, you know, gravitate towards these like deeper, cool tones. This eyeshadow palette is one I'm going to be reaching for very consistently over this next season. So that's the Major Dimension 2 eyeshadow palette from Patrick Ta. And those are the 5 newish eyeshadow palettes that I look forward to using in the fall. Let me know what you are kind of gravitating towards, or what you think you'll be gravitating towards as the weather here in the Northern Hemisphere starts to get a little bit colder. Let me know down below in the comment section, and let me know what you think of my picks. Definitely give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.